Welcome to Body Efficiency Training, and in this video we're going to be doing a nice easy full body mobility workout, and we're working up to some anti-gravity training. And I mean anti-gravity in the sense of against gravity. We've got to find the most efficient ways of holding our correct posture whilst gravity tries to pull us down, and it tends to pull us out of alignment. So how can we hold ourselves against gravity in the most easiest and efficient way? And you can start by warming up with me now, twisting left and right and holding a nice vertical spine. And we're going to start by asking a question, and that is, what position would your body form if it were floating in space and you had total relaxation? Now, both these things are important. If you were floating in space, you would have no gravity acting upon you, and if you had total relaxation, there would be no residual tension in any of the joints pulling your body into a different shape. So what position would your body spring back to given those circumstances? So this would be the most relaxed position your body could be in. And as in terms of body efficiency training, this is going to be central. And in fact, this concept, this idea, is the very foundation of this whole training. And this body efficiency training is really my own personal thing. I have originated this from scratch, and what we're doing here is a brand new idea about how to exercise and how to use your body. Now, I've trained a lot of things throughout my life, mostly martial arts, Shaolin Kung Fu, Tai Chi, Qigong, that sort of thing. And I have a degree in physics, so I've got a very logical mind. But really, this is not even a mixture of all those things. This is a brand new thing starting from scratch, built through logic and an exploration, a scientific discovery as to how the body works. So you've got to know a bit of anatomy, but not too much. The anatomy and the work that I've done is internal practice. I've simply been obsessively experimenting on myself and holding myself in different positions to try and find out which is the best one. And this is what I'm sharing with you now in this body efficiency training. But it's also a disclaimer. You've got to think about it yourself, try and experiment and find out if you agree with me. And so we're working up to this thing I call the neutral stance, which is the very foundation of this whole thing. And you can see this is a natural position, so it's based on the anatomy of your bone structure. But again, you're in a field of gravity, so we have to find a way of holding this position against gravity. So it's anti-gravity training. And it's very, very important to understand this, because we need our structure to be independent from gravity. We've got to be able to hold our structure no matter what we are doing, what angle our body is at, whether we're lying down or standing up. We need to know and feel our structure from the inside and keep control of it. And so there's two things really we're doing in this body efficiency. One is that, finding our alignment and controlling it, holding our structure. And the second thing is we're also working on relaxation. So we're doing this to warm up a lot of fluidity, movement of flow. So you've got to be able to relax and flow. So now we're starting to build the neutral stance, and we start with the wrists. So what we're trying to do is move the wrists to the full range of motion. So you flex them back and flex them forward. And the idea is you're trying to feel the joint, the full range of motion, what the joint can do. And what we're looking for is the middle position, because the middle position between those two movements is going to be the position where neither muscle or tendon is acting any more than the other. And then you do the same for twisting. You twist them all the way one way and then twist them all the way the other way, and try and feel that full range of motion. So you're feeling what the wrist can do in this rotation. And now you've got to find the middle position. So the middle position is here. So now we've just found the neutral stance for the wrists. And it's just where I'm holding them. And now we do the fingers. So the movement of the fingers, you clench a fist and then stretch them apart. Clench the fist and stretch them apart. And you're feeling the full range of motion of the fingers. So again, where's the midpoint? Well, the midpoint is going to be this half claw position. So now you've got the neutral stance for the hands and the wrists. So we work up to the elbows. So now you bend the elbows and straighten the elbows. And again, very simple. You're trying to feel the full range of motion. But what happens is when one muscle contracts, the other one is stretched. And the stretched muscle is elastic and it wants to pull back. So if your arm is not in the midpoint, one of these tendons is elastic pulling the other one. So you've got to find the middle point. And of course it's right there, 90 degrees of the elbows. So now we've got the neutral stance for the elbows, the wrists and the hands. Now we work up into the shoulders. Same thing, up and down. So you lift the shoulders up and then stretch the shoulders down. Point the fingers, you see where I'm pointing, pull down, lift them up and then stretch them down. You're trying to find a full range of motion of the shoulders in the shoulder socket, in the joint. So you're moving the shoulder in the shoulder joint itself, up and down. And you're trying to find the middle position. And it's going to be slightly up. So our shoulders have got to be held slightly up. And now we do a rotation in the shoulder, same business. Rotate out and rotate in. Try to feel the full range of motion. See, it's about the tendons around the joint. You've got to find the midpoint where no tendon or ligament is acting any more than any other. So that will be the neutral position, the neutral stance for each joint. And you can see now where it would be. So the elbows are up a bit, but not too high. So your arms are out about 45 degrees. And now we've got to do back and forward. So you pull the shoulders back and project the shoulders forward. Pull the shoulders back and project the shoulders forward. You're working the full mobility of the shoulder joint, but you're trying to find and feel inside your body where the middle position is. See, the anatomy we need is this internal feeling. We've got to feel it because we've got to do it. And it's all about this inner body awareness. So your shoulders are going to be up and back a bit to find this middle position. The elbows are out about 45 degrees, hands in line with the forearms, and the hands in this loose claw. And now we move on to the spine. So you arch back and then you bend forward, hunch forward. So you're trying to mobilize the middle of the spine about the solar plexus level, arching and bending forward. And you're trying to feel the range of motion. Be very careful. Keep the belly pulled in to support your spine. And you're trying to feel the full range of motion in the spine and find where is that middle point. And of course it's coming up to standing up straight. And then you're going to do the same thing side to side. So you're just arching the spine side to side and trying to feel the mobility of the spine and find an even stretch through the spine. You've got to feel this inside and feel as each time you pass the midpoint, when you're standing up, you feel it. So you've got to remember what this middle balance position is like. You're essentially balancing. You're balancing your joints inside your body. You've got to feel where the middle position is and hold it there. And you've got to hold it there with minimum tension. And now we're doing the same thing with a twist. You've got to pull the belly in and use the obliques to twist. But again, you're feeling the full range of motion of the spine. And then you've got to come to the middle point and feel that. And of course, that's right in the middle. So now take a breather, loosen it all up. And we've done a lot of work now building the neutral stance for the upper body. The middle point where everything is in its position where it can move in any direction evenly. But now we've got to do the core. So this is very important. Gravity pulls our internal organs down. And we want to lift our internal organs up a bit. So you've got to open the rib cage. So here I'm pulling in the stomach, or pulling in the TA muscle, pulling in the obliques, opening the rib cage, tilting the rib cage up a little bit. So there's space in the rib cage for the internal organs to rise up, and I'm expanding the ribs at the back also. So you've got to feel the expansion left and right in the rib cage at the back, and you've got to keep the belly pulled in, the TA muscle, transversus abdominals. You've got to keep that pulled in, navel towards the spine. So this will counteract the lumbar arch, but you do want a lumbar arch. So you've got to do a bit of work in the torso to counteract gravity. So this is the anti-gravity work inside the torso. And also the pelvic floor. Even the pelvic floor you lift up a little bit. So you can imagine inside you're pulling up all the muscles to lift the internal organs up, and you're opening the rib cage to make a bit of space for that. And then you breathe deeply into the back of the rib cage. And now onto the legs. So now we feel the full range of motion of the knees. So on one leg you lift the leg up, try and pull it in as tight as you can, and then you project it out, stretch out to the tippy toes. Feel the full range of motion of the leg through the knee joint. And you're trying to feel where is the middle point, of course. Feel the stretch each way in the knee. You see both positions there is a stretch happening. Your knee is stretched when it's bent, and it's stretched when it's straight. The middle point is where there's no stretch happening. It's the neutral position. It's the position where you would be also in anti-gravity. Now you do the ankle, flex the ankle back and forward. So again, trying to feel the full range of motion, and the midpoint of the ankle is about here, pointing slightly down. So when you put your foot down, the ball of the foot will be touching the floor. You remember, we're floating in space. This is anti-gravity. But of course, we're going to have to put our weight on it. So we're going to have to hold this. But just for now, you're trying to feel the position. And the same with the other leg. Lift the knee up, pull it in as tight as you can, and project it out. You can lean against the wall if you need balance. That's fine. It is all about the knee and feeling the leg. So you're trying to mobilize the knee and feel very carefully the full range of motion and the full stretch in the joint both ways. Either side of the joint is stretching, and where's the middle point? Where is there nothing happening to the knee? It can just relax. But of course we're in gravity, so you have to hold it. And then the ankle, flex back and flex forward. Flex back and flex forward, trying to feel where that middle point is. And it's pointing very slightly down, halfway. And when you put your foot down, it's the ball of the foot is going to touch. So we're going to be resting on the ball of the feet. And here again, so now let's go a little bit further, shake out the legs, loosen it up, and we've got to do a bit more work in the hip joint. So now we take our weight onto one leg, just stand on one leg so the other leg is free, and now you can see you point the toe out a little bit, and now the free leg here, we got the knee position and the ankle position. You're on the ball of the foot, but it's loose because all the weight's on the other leg. You don't have to go so low, but just enough so that you can rotate the hip joint. So now we've got to rotate the hip all the way in and all the way out. Control it from the hip itself. Pivot on the ball of the foot, pull the hip out and pull the hip in, trying to feel the full range of motion in the turn of the hip. And of course we're trying to find the middle position. And the middle position is slightly out. Now we can do the same with the ankle, but the ankle just stays in line with the knee. So the ankle and the knee must point together so that they don't fight against each other. And do the same with the next leg. So again, stand on the back leg so the front leg can be loose, and then you can stick the bottom out a little bit so that your hips are working. Pull the belly in, and then rotate the hip outwards and inwards, dropping the knee in, pivoting on the ball of the foot, trying to feel the full rotation of the hip joint itself, and control it from the hip itself. Use the tendons and the ligaments in the hip to move it. So you're actually activating the joint. You're mobilizing and activating the joint. And now you know what the position is for the legs. And you can see it's basically a horse riding stance or a bit of a frog leg stance. And the width of this, again, is going to depend on your mobility and flexibility. So you don't have to go quite as wide as this. That's fine. See what you feel. But you're going to be on the ball of the feet. And now, of course, you know the arms. The arms are up in front. Okay, loosen up, shaken up, and now we've got the final bit to do, which is the very core itself. So you stand up nice and straight, you pull in the belly, hands on the hips, squeeze the glutes, lock out the legs, so you're pulling your body nice and tight, lift up the rib cage, tilt it up a bit, but shoulders up and back, and just lever forward at the hips. So you squeeze the glutes to come up again, and as you lever forward, project the hips backwards. Take your weight onto the back of the heels as you stretch back, and then as you squeeze, you've got to squeeze the glutes, drive the hips forward to rise up again. Keep the belly tight. So that's the hip joint, and you can see now if you bend the knees, let the knees go out, you can bend forward a bit further. You're still trying to keep a backward arch in the spine, project the hips, but you're trying to feel the full range of motion of the bend in the hips. How far can you go forward? Well, you can go quite far. And you're trying to, of course, find the middle point in this bend of the hips. So you arch back as far as you can, and down here, now this is about the midpoint. So you're leaning slightly forward. It's like a half squat position. It's quite a dynamic position. But remember, this is floating in space. So what position would your body form if it were floating in space? So that's what we've got to think about. This is anti-gravity. You've got to pull the belly in, lift up the rib cage, so the spine is in its natural S curve. Remember, nothing is acting on the spine. And you're bending forward because the hips can bend forward. So that's the position where the hips are most relaxed. They're also out a little bit. And you're also now on the ball of the feet, because remember the ankle position, and you're levering forward, so your bottom is out like you're about to sit on a chair, and you can come quite low, but this again will all depend on your natural flexibility or mobility, and just do what is comfortable. And you've got to keep that nice arch in the spine, your bottom out, and you lift the rib cage, shoulders up and back, elbows are out about 45 degrees, but down a little bit, hands are in, but remember in that curled claw position, and the neck is up in line with the spine. And now you lever slightly forward at the hips. Now the lower back is going to do a lot of work, so you've got to clench the glutes. You've got to project the hips back like you're sitting on a chair, but also squeeze them tight. So you're trying to let the knees go out, which means you're driving the glutes forward, but at the same time you've got to keep an arch in your spine, i.e. project your hips back. So the way you hold this is by a stretch in the hip joint, and you can go quite low into a deep stance, but you don't need to go this low. And you'll see it's a dynamic position. It's a jump. You're halfway in a jump. You can imagine this as a photograph taken midway in a jump. So this neutral stance is the most relaxed position your body can be in. But of course, when you're actually doing it standing in gravity, it's quite dynamic and quite hard work. So don't do this too long, because you can hurt your lower back, so don't overdo it. You must keep the belly in tight, but you can also see it's very much like a fetal position. And remember, you're floating in space and your body has complete total relaxation. No tension or no stretch in any joint. So again, let's try one more time. Look, you're squatting down in a half squat, a sort of horse riding stance. Arms are up, but the hands are loose. You're trying to be as relaxed as possible. Remember, you're floating in space, levering forward, belly pulled in, shoulders up and back. And now what we're going to do is going to stretch this up into an upright position. So you start to lift up, so you've got to drive your pelvis forward, lift up the rib cage, lift up the shoulders, stretch open the fingers, arching back into an upright position. So to straighten up the spine, but keeping the knees a bit bent, you've got to let the knees go out. And then we spring back down to the neutral stance. So again, now you inhale as you rise up and stretch. See, as you're stretching away from the neutral stance, you're doing more work. Now you spring back to the relaxed position. So against the relaxed position, you're stretching. You do it good. See, the upright position is further away from the neutral stance, so that your body is actually doing more work. It's further away from its most efficient position. So we're practicing that, stretching away from the neutral stance and bouncing back down to the neutral stance. And you can think of this as slow motion jumping. You're jumping up and then you're going down. So this is a slow motion. And you inhale as you rise up, stretch the back of the ribs, and then exhale as you sink down. You lever forward as you go down and lever up as you go up. Okay, now that's given us something to think about. The neutral stance, remember, is floating in space. This is anti-gravity training, and we're trying to work out the most efficient way of holding our body whilst we're standing here in gravity. And of course, mostly we're standing up nice and straight. So we've got to do the dynamic standing up straight exercise. This neutral stance is very powerful. It's a half squat, so remember, be careful. Do this slowly and carefully. Don't do it too long, because you are working your lower back. But the trick is to work your glutes. Don't work the lower back, you work the glutes and the psoas muscle. The psoas muscle is the one that levers you forward. And you're holding the position by a stretch in the hips. And remember, belly in, shoulders up and back. Your internal organs are also floating in space. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this little video. Look forward to seeing you in the next one.